Sometimes, a journey begins like any other. A young man, a backpack, a long road ahead, but some roads never end. This is the story of Randall Dean Leach, a 20-year-old who set out to see the American West and vanished without a trace. His name now rests on a cold case playing card, the Four of Hearts, and the mystery of what happened after his final phone call has haunted his family for more than 40 years. Welcome to Drawn to Crime. For more stories like this, subscribe and leave a like. It was autumn 1980. The air in Wisconsin was already sharp, carrying the first hints of snow. Randall, or Randy, as his friends called him, was a college student, restless and curious. He wanted to take a break from school, to see the world beyond small-town life. He packed light, a few clothes, a camera, a notebook, and started hitchhiking west. His goal was simple: reach Bend, Oregon, where his sister lived. 2,000 miles of open road. For Randy, it wasn't about the destination. It was about the freedom of getting there. He called his parents from time to time, always cheerful. They worried, of course. Every parent would. But he promised to stay in touch. And for a while, he did. By early November, Randy had made it as far as Idaho Falls, a quiet town surrounded by farmland and long stretches of open plains. There, he met a local family who owned a dairy farm. They offered him food, a bed, and a few days of work in exchange for help with chores. Randy accepted. For several days, he milked cows, fixed fences, and laughed with the family's kids. He was polite, easygoing, and grateful. Nothing about him seemed unusual or troubled. On the evening of November 6, 1980, Randy called his family one last time. He told them he was safe, that he'd soon continue toward Oregon. His voice was calm, steady, normal. It was the last time anyone ever heard from him. The next morning, he was gone. His backpack and clothing were found inside the farmhouse. No note, no explanation, just silence. The family assumed he'd gone to catch a ride on the highway, but hours turned into days, and he never returned. When his family didn't hear from him again, panic set in. They began calling police stations all along his route, from Wisconsin to Oregon, but no one had seen him. No hospital had admitted a man by his name. No one reported a hitchhiker matching his description. It was as if Randy Leach had been erased from the map. Police in Bonneville County, Idaho, began investigating. They interviewed the farm owners. They searched nearby fields and roads. No sign of Randy, no footprints, no clothing, no struggle, nothing. What they did have were questions. If Randy planned to keep traveling, why leave behind his backpack? Why not take his clothes, his identification, his money? Why vanish into the cold November night without a single word? For his parents, the days became months, the months, years. They sent letters to police departments across multiple states. They even checked with shelters and churches, hoping he might have changed his name. But every lead ended in the same dead end. By the mid-1980s, the trail had gone completely cold. The boy who had left Wisconsin to find himself had disappeared somewhere between Idaho and Oregon, a void in time no one could fill. Decades passed. Then, in 2015, Randy's case resurfaced in a most unusual way. The Idaho State Police had launched a project called the Deck of Cards. Each card in the deck represented an unsolved cold case: murders, disappearances, mysteries. These decks were distributed in prisons in hopes that someone behind bars might hold the missing piece of the puzzle. On the Four of Hearts was Randall Dean Leach, his smiling face, his story condensed into a few haunting lines. Last seen in Idaho Falls, November 1980, disappeared while traveling to Oregon. But despite renewed attention, no new evidence emerged. What really happened to Randy Leach? There are several theories, each darker than the last. The first, and perhaps the simplest, is that Randy met with an accident, a wrong step, a fall, exposure to the cold. Idaho's terrain can be brutal, especially in November. If he wandered off the road, he could have succumbed to the elements. But after 4 decades, not a single trace of his body was ever found. No remains, no clothing, nothing. The second theory, that he chose to disappear voluntarily. Some believe Randy may have decided to start a new life, perhaps under another name, somewhere far away. But his family doesn't buy it. He was close to his parents, deeply connected to his sister, and had no reason to vanish. Then there's the third, most unsettling theory, that Randy became a victim of foul play. In the 1970s and 80s, the American highways were full of hitchhikers, and not all of them reached their destination. Some were picked up by strangers who were far from kind. Serial predators roamed those roads, names we know now but didn't then. Could Randy have crossed paths with one of them? If so, who was behind the wheel that night? Investigators searched through records of known offenders in the region. No connection was ever proven. But as with many cases of the era, documentation was limited, evidence was lost, and witnesses faded into memory. The truth might still be out there, buried in a forgotten police report or hidden in someone's conscience. Today, more than 40 years later, Randy's case remains open. His dental records are still stored in the national database, ready to match against unidentified remains. But until that match is made, his story is unfinished. What we do know is this: a young man left home chasing freedom. He found kindness on a quiet Idaho farm. He made one final phone call to say he was safe. And then, he was gone. Somewhere out there between the wheat fields and the mountains lies the answer. Maybe it's hidden in the soil. Maybe it's locked in a memory someone's tried to forget. Or maybe it's been staring at us all along, waiting for someone to notice. 45 years is a long time to live without closure. For Randy's family, every November feels like the first. The same question echoes in their hearts. Where did he go? And who was the last person to see him alive? If you know anything about the disappearance of Randall Dean Leach, even the smallest detail, contact the Idaho Cold Case tip line. Because sometimes, the smallest detail is the one that solves everything. Randy Leach's name may never make headlines again. But on that card, the 4 of Hearts, his story still beats quietly, reminding us that even forgotten cases deserve to be remembered. This was Drawn to Crime. Subscribe, like, and share, because somewhere, someone out there might hold the truth.